Okay, I think that's everybody who was in the waiting room admitted. So good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Jubilee Centre for Character and Virtues at the University of Birmingham's webinar on leading character education in primary schools. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We're very grateful. We know how busy people are, particularly teachers and those involved in education at this time. So we're very grateful that you can join us. As we'll say later and at various points through the webinar, this is the first in a new series of webinars. There's more details of the next event will be available during this webinar. But we're here this afternoon to hear from 5 speakers on leading character education in the primary schools. Each of the speakers will speak for 5 to 7 minutes, roughly. I'll be chairing it. My name is Andrew Peterson. I'm a Professor of Character and Citizenship Education and one of the Deputy Directors of the Jubilee Centre. And I'll be introducing the speakers and moving us along. And then as the webinar progresses, I'll be managing the questions along with other colleagues who are here from the Jubilee Centre, and you should be able to spot them in our names. We have a Jubilee Centre after our names on the Zoom system here. So we'll have the speakers present, and then we'll have time for questions. As I've said, we will mediate these questions, but please do put the questions in the chat function should you wish to raise them, because we're such a large group and it's so wonderful to have such a large group. It's better for people to ask their questions by chat. We will do our best to respond to as many of the questions as we can before we finish the webinar at 5 o'clock. So we have a range of speakers here to speak on leading character education in primary schools. And first, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who's Megan Robinson. Megan started her teaching career in Queensland, Australia, teaching for 9 years in a variety of primary schools in country and city locations. And she came to the UK in 1995 on a 1-year teacher exchange programme and never went back. Having lived in Australia, I found that a little bit hard to believe. It's such a wonderful place. But Australia's loss is certainly our gain. And Megan has worked in Yorkshire, Northamptonshire, Berkshire, and now in Hampshire. She's been a head teacher since 2001, first in a village school, and now in a school called Elvetham Heath Primary School, which is a 3-form entry school in Northamptonshire, where Megan has been for 7 years. And I know that a number of my colleagues at the Jubilee Centre will join me in saying that the school and Megan's leadership is absolutely inspirational in terms of character education. And I've had the pleasure of visiting the school a few times, and you cannot help but notice and feel the infectiousness of the character education focus at the school. So we couldn't want for a better speaker to start our webinar this afternoon. Megan, I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Andrew, for those lovely words. And hello, everybody. It's really nice to meet you virtually, if nothing else. I've got some notes rather than a PowerPoint slide, so forgive me for looking down to refer to it. Basically, our character education journey started in September 2016. I was shocked when I actually looked that up. It doesn't feel like that long ago. We started with an inset day in September, like lots of schools do, where I had all of my staff. I've got about 110 staff in total, if you include every single person who works here. I also invited governors along as well. Prior to the inset day in September, I'd sent a survey out to all staff, whether they were office staff, cleaning staff, support staff, lunchtime staff, teachers, etc., etc., as well as governors, children, and the parents. And I had a big page full of virtues. There must have been about 40 to 50 virtues on there. And I said, circle the top 5 that you think you would like the children at this school to leave with, equipped for their future learning and their future life, that you think the 5 top ones would be. Not easy. I did it myself as well. Really, really difficult. And obviously that's good that it's difficult because it makes people think, but they were only allowed to circle 5. I color coded them according to what type of participant they were in the survey, but there was no naming or anything like that. So that was, I then looked at them over the summer holiday, and it actually was very easy. There were 5 very clear winners, if you like. The 5, I'll talk about those 5 as we go on. But the inset day was a presentation to everybody. I used a lot of the Jubilee Centre materials. Now, the Jubilee Centre materials have always been great, but they're massive now. There's lots more now. But at the time, I just used what was there, and we did lots of, so I mixed the groups up. So there was a mixture on each table of governors and different sorts of staff. So people who would normally not perhaps get the chance to talk to each other, which was really useful actually. So we had lots of discussion groups about what character education is and what it isn't, because that's really important. So it kind of relaxes people that it's not some weird indoctrination thing, it's not some religious culty thing, because people were coming in from different levels of understanding. I think most people now are more familiar with the term character education than perhaps they were back in 2016. The main point that I was trying to bring across to everybody, that it was not going to be another add-on, another thing that we focused on for a year or two that was then replaced by something else. Because as we all know, in education, there are lots of things that have come and gone over the years, but this was something that I was passionate about, making it live and breathe in the school, whether I was there or somebody else came in or whatever. It had to be something that this was how we were going to be. So that was about reassuring people on that. I gave people some time for reading some introductory documents, so summaries of key points. They got to jot down questions on big bits of paper to talk as in their own table group, as well as with the whole room as well where appropriate. And it gave them the chance to talk about any interesting or controversial points for whole staff conversations. So we decided that we would use, I already knew that I wanted to use the word virtues rather than values, because every school says they have values. Doesn't matter about the terminology, but in my mind, I wanted to give it that kudos, that's something a little bit different. I didn't say we're going to call it virtues. I said, what do you think about the idea of using the term character education with the children and the parents, and using the term virtues rather than just values? So we were able to have a whole discussion about that. So we all came together and agreed that, which was fantastic. We then talked about the nitty-gritty part about how do we measure it? Because as we know in schools, everything important has to be measured, right? That's the system we're in. So that was a really lovely conversation about, does everything of value have to be measured? So there was a good conversation, a good, how are we going to measure it? How will we know that it's worth doing? Do we need to present loads of data to governors, to Ofsted, to each other about it? So there was lots of good open conversation about that. Do we need a badge system, a reward system for recognising character in the children at the school? Because so many things, again, particularly in primary schools, we give them a sticker for this, we give them points for this, and we give them, so we talked a lot about, did we need some kind of recognition system? And the answer came up with no, because it's something that we wanted it to be an expectation that everybody showed character. And remember, true character is, as I always say to the children, and it's in lots of the books about character education, true character is how you behave when no one's looking. And it should be an intrinsic thing that makes you feel good if you're displaying good character. So if you're then going to change it by having a reward system, we felt that it went against the very nature of what character education is all about. So we talked about the concept of character taught as well as character caught and what that meant. So that was a very important introductory part of it, that it's because teachers are obviously very worried about extra planning. How does this work? Because the whole way through, are we going to have to do more planning? Is it going to be an add-on? Is it going to be throughout? So it was how we modelled ourselves as people with character in our school, how we demonstrate those virtues was really important. We also have a very strong link to growth mindset. So we decided that growth mindset's another thing that can be around in every school, but we wanted that to be very much a part of our whole approach to character education as well, and it slots in very nicely. We looked at the Jubilee Centre website materials. There are great videos on there. We used some of the videos in the inset day, and we looked at the lesson suggestions, and particularly difficult at that time, there wasn't a lot around for infant year groups. So the Key Stage 1 and early years teachers had to think about how they would potentially use the materials and adapt it to suit them. I shared the results of the survey right at the end of the day because I didn't want people to get distracted. Someone muted me, sorry. So we shared the core virtues and we used the hand. So we have respect, responsibility, perseverance, honesty, and kindness. And at the start, we said all of those 5 virtues, and we did a smiley face and said that they all lead to happiness. We've now dropped the happiness bit because we don't need to worry about that. We just focus on, so if I point to any finger, the children will be able to tell me what virtue it is from reception up to year 6 and what they meant. So we had large, colourful lettering. Anyone who visits the school, like Andrew and Mike and some of the others have been to the school, see very bright, colourful lettering as you walk into the school in our school library, up on the wall, very clear to anyone who visits that there are lots and lots of virtues on the wall, including our main 5 core virtues in bright colour. So it's a deliberate statement about what we are. We no longer were going to have class rules. The core virtues are linked instead to modelling behaviour. So we don't say, here's a list of rules. We say, here are our 5 virtues, and all of our learning behaviour and actual behaviour is focused around that. We started with a weekly focus, 1 virtue to be the focus. We used the materials from the Jubilee Centre, linked to PSHE if necessary. All the morning tasks that week, so between 5 and 10 minutes, were focused on an activity around that virtue to help children make sense of it. And the assembly focus that week that either one of my deputies or myself launched was about what that virtue actually meant. Star of the Week was changed so that all children were given Star of the Week were based on the weekly virtue. It soon became apparent from the staff that a week wasn't enough. So that's where adaptability comes in as a leader. We changed it to fortnightly because some weeks, as you know, in schools are just so busy with other things. I gave a separate presentation to governors, and this helped them with their learning walks, their audits, etc., so they understood if they weren't in the initial inset. I gave them the same presentation in a condensed way so that the governors understood. And one of the key focus points in our strategic plan was character education and the development of character education, and I kept it in for 3 years because I felt that it needed to embed properly. So it was reported each time in governor meetings as well. Newsletters to parents gave examples of virtue use in school and in the wider world. I would refer to things going on in the wider world. And then parents started emailing me to tell me how their children were starting to use their virtue language at home too, which was lovely. All classrooms and shared areas had to have displays which reflected the current virtue and associated work and quotes, and support staff and teachers started adding to those themselves, things they'd found online or found at home. We now as we've moved on, we now group those virtues in the shared areas showing civic, intellectual and performance virtues so that children can start to distinguish between them all. Staff meeting time for reading was important too. I didn't just want to put things in their pigeonholes to read when you have time, because as we know, teachers don't have time. So I made sure that our staff meetings once a month, a staff meeting, they were given some reading time, which they really appreciated. Our aims and vision statement was amended to reflect the character education approach. Our website has a section explaining what character education looks like in our school. Any vacancies that we advertise always have a statement that we are a character education school so that it's clear that what we're looking for is somebody who embraces that. We ask questions in our interview process about their understanding of character and how they feel about it. All of our relevant policies mention character education, so teaching and learning policy, behaviour policy, etc. Our homeschool agreement mentions our virtues and the importance of character. Our induction programme includes relevant readings and discussions about how they're expected as a member of staff to model their language. The New Year Our Parent presentation talks about the language of virtues, how we teach character and why. And all the parents love it, actually. I've never yet met a parent that says, that sounds terrible, I don't want to come here. They all nod and smile. Learning walks, lesson observations, all include sections about the use of virtue literacy. We look at our marking to make sure that we're using the language of virtues, and the governors and senior leadership team talk to children in those sessions about their understanding of the virtues. Where's your virtues board? What's the current virtue? Which one are you using most today? Which one don't you use much today? Year 6, our governors survey about pupil attitudes that the governors do every year when ready to leave for secondary school. They talk to them about what impact they think the virtues have had on their learning over the years and how they think those virtues will be useful going forward into secondary school and later life. And we get some amazing responses from that. Recently, our PSHE curriculum has been developed by us and therefore responds to the needs of the children in this particular area. And we use local data and trends. So for example, year 6 had a county lines lesson based on virtues, and year R had a lesson about drinking medicine because we got some information from our local hospital reporting a rise in cases. Each half term, all of the children complete a half-termly reflection based on their use of virtues in everyday life. Children have been surprisingly honest about this when completing these, and they're displayed above their pigeonholes and referred to before they do their next reflection. Key messages I would give: be prepared to hasten slowly. I wanted it in overnight. Of course we do, anything exciting and new, but be prepared to give everyone time to adapt and grow. Be prepared to change course. For example, I gave you an example before, changing from weekly to fortnightly focus of a virtue. Don't feel you need to slot everything into the current curriculum, but do allow for easy wins because some things do fit in incredibly well. You need to lead with passion, commitment, and positivity. Otherwise, people won't come on board. Give staff time to read, and governors. Don't put things in their pigeonholes, like I said, to read when they have time. Let them see that it's something important that you're going to give them time to do. Do use the Jubilee Centre materials in the website. It is a plethora of information. It's fantastic. My suggestion is read Tom Harrison's book about character education in primary schools, because that is like a Bible and there's so much good stuff in there. And I know Andrew's written some good stuff as well. James Arthur's written stuff. Lots of the people who work there have written good stuff. I'm not saying that they're not good, but Tom's book is very easy to read, easy to follow. And when you're a school leader and you don't have a lot of time, or a teacher, there are some great things in there. Keep governors and parents informed, keep it live, keep it fresh. Don't worry about needing to measure it. Once people understand it, they won't expect you to. My attached inspector at Hampshire is absolutely won over by it and loves it. And share good practice with others. I'll be quiet now.
Megan, thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. Covered a lot of ground there, and I'll just remind people the details of Tom's book is going up there on the chat that Megan referred to, but also do start putting questions in as and when you wish in the chat, and we'll come to these at the end. So Megan, thank you very much, and we'll move now to our second speaker, who's Mr. Robin Venn. Robin has taught in both primary and secondary settings, and over the last few years his focus and motivation has moved towards the character education of both students and teachers. Robin currently leads character education in Colmore Junior School and also delivers training to his partnerships ITT cohorts based on the Jubilee Centre's framework. And Robin, we're delighted to say, is also currently in the second year of the University of Birmingham's and the Jubilee Centre's Masters in Character Education, of course, that's run online and is sort of unique in the world in that regard. Just a bit about Colmore Junior School. It's a junior school in the Kings Heath area of Birmingham. The school has the National Teaching School status and is part of a larger Colmore Partnership Teaching School Alliance. And whilst touches upon some of the things Megan said, you know, the school has always had a strong focus on core values, but over the last few years has been shifting its focus towards character education, and that has accumulated with the recent award of the Association for Character Education's Kitemark Plus Award. So Robin, over to you, and you're very welcome to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Megan. So just to kind of give a brief précis of our character development. Similar to Megan, we did a survey with our parents as a form of engaging the wider community and sort of generating some buy-in, if you like, into the changes that we wanted to make. As Andrew said, character has always been a big part of Colmore, but we wanted to make it more explicit in terms of delivery and kind of carry that meaning through for the students. So we surveyed the parents on what values and kind of principles that they wanted their children to leave school with, and there was some fairly common answers in terms of resilience, leadership, but there were some other ones as well that came through in terms of being aware of their community and being aware of the wider world around them, being independent, being able to work independently and make independent choices, being healthy and well and happy. So we kind of took those answers from the survey, and the other part was to help develop the staff, and that was harder in some respects than talking to the parents, because you in a large school you have 60 odd teachers, some of whom have 30+ years of experience, and some of the issues around teachers who believe that they are already delivering a good character education, believe that it's already an embedded part of their role. It can take some kind of convincing and some reasoning to explain about character being a bit more explicit and looking for that, not just it being caught, but taught and sought as well, which is, that's, I understand that because obviously the MA is helping me understand that, but it's something that we try to kind of give to the teachers. So we entered into some more philosophical discussion with teachers, and it wasn't, again, as Megan said, it wasn't an overnight thing. This was over the course of a series of CPD sessions held over a term, where we would ask teachers to go away and write things that were important in terms of whole child development outside of an academic area. So that, looking at the non-academics development of children in terms of those values. When we came to develop the actual delivery or the vehicle to be more explicit with our character education, we came up with our 7 key principles, which are the seven sort of virtues that Megan's talking about. We called them principles, and they were inclusivity, leadership, globally and locally aware, resilient, independent, healthy and well, and creative. And whilst a lot of the curriculum provides space for PSHE, and we have our wider learning here, which is more non-academic, we wanted to embed our character education across the whole curriculum, and as such all subject leaders were asked to go away and develop a SIP document where they could link specific parts of all of their curriculum teaching for that area to the 7 key principles. So at key points throughout the year, their subject, so say for maths, for example, would have to identify one of the key principles that they could use and be more explicit on in the teaching. So that was an actual kind of, that's the taught element that we were dealing with there. And we embedded our 7 key principles separately to our behaviour. We feel that behaviour is something that needs to be at a certain standard in whatever institution you're in. But actually the principles were more sophisticated in terms of what we were asking the students to understand and develop on their own. So the key principles were, whilst they work in tandem with behaviour and they do inform each other, the principles were separate to our behaviour policy. Then we kind of moved on to developing the SORT approach. What were the opportunities that we could spot in our school life to develop those key principles and identify the values and virtues that we wanted to talk about? Well, every week in PPA, the teachers have to identify specific areas that can be brought forward into the curriculum every week, so that we have a weekly focus or a fortnightly focus or a topic focus to develop one of our principles. So it might be inclusivity, it might be leadership, it might be globally and locally aware. And as you can imagine, some of the subjects lend themselves more easily to that than others, but we definitely make sure that all of our PPA planning, the lessons have a link to the principles that we're keen for the children to develop. We also kind of looked at more non-academic ways. So we've got involved with Parliament a lot more than we were, because that was something that we felt would help develop their kind of leadership, and you know, politically becoming inclusive was something that we were quite keen on. And then we've extended that by one of the areas I'm really interested in my MA is helping prepare teachers for character education as it becomes more prominent. So I've developed a 4-session training program for the ITT cohort that comes through, and I've just delivered the last one on Friday, the first one on Friday, which was an introduction to the building blocks of character, which was developed by the Jubilee Centre, which has been key actually, and it's been really well received. So I think, you know, I think it's like anything, the change is always hardest for the people who are actually living it at that particular point in time. Whereas I believe that if we start talking to trainee teachers about character early on in their careers, it's hopefully something that will stay with them. So we're very proud of that as a school as well. And one of the things that Megan said that was very interesting was, wouldn't it be nice to be able to ask students different questions about their time at school at the end of their career? So we're thinking about how we can develop some questions and some kind of feedback from students about how character has helped them on their journey. It's not just about how well they did in their SATs, but you know, we want them to be able to reflect on their character development as well. So that's something that we're going to be working closely with class teachers with year 6 with over the course of the next year. One of the really important things is the MA has helped our school by me being able to provide theory to underpin some of the decisions we're making. The research is current. I'm involved, obviously, quite closely with research because I'm constantly writing assignments about it, but it helps me bring back new ideas that I can take to the head and say, you know, have we thought about this as an avenue? This is some new research that's come through. Could we perhaps include this in some CPD? So we carry that cycle on all the time. It's not something that can just stand still. We need to be able to constantly review it, because we're getting to the point where we see that character underpins, in my opinion, virtually everything that is undertaken in a school, and you know, gives those students that may, you know, academically not have as much kind of success as others, but it certainly helps them develop their character to a bit where they probably can make some better choices with their life, which is, you know, the really important thing. So yeah, it's the MA continues to help, and has been fantastic in the support they've given us as a school, the Jubilee Centre with their materials and so on. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much for your presentation that again touched on many of the themes that Megan had spoken about. I think it's really important that, you know, the Jubilee Centre has always said there was a core to SIP character education, but there's not a one-size-fits-all model. And one of the things we're very interested in, and the various resources we produce, is looking at how each individual school implements character education. We have some questions about that. I'll move on quickly to try and allow time for those questions. There's a couple of questions about evaluations. Perhaps if one of my colleagues can put a link in there to the Centre Evaluation Handbook, and we'll return to that at the end. But it's my pleasure now to move on to our third speaker, which is Mr. Evan Hollows, who is head teacher of Eastbrook Primary School. Evan has been teaching in a London school since 1999 and was appointed head at Eastbrook Primary in September 2018. Eastbrook is an all-through school in Dagenham, and the former comprehensive was rebuilt with a new primary in 2016. The school requires improvement for several years and has recently introduced character education to help drive change throughout the school. So Evan, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and hello everybody. It's nice to be here. Yes, we're very much at the start, I feel, of our journey compared to Robin and Megan's schools, and of course that's been punctuated somewhat by the pandemic. I want to sort of start by saying that we've of course never just thought about teaching to the test. It's always been an approach that we wanted to develop the whole child, but we didn't actually have a particular approach to it, and certainly character education wasn't being mentioned until 2019, when we started working with a new executive head who started introducing the idea of character education, as that had been working successfully in other schools that he'd worked in. And we started introducing what we term a character and academics curriculum. And there's some crossover with what Robin and Megan have already said, because we also involved our whole in working out which virtues we held most dear. And that was really important. People have mentioned buy-in already, and it was really important for that reason that everybody was sort of on board in this new path that we were taking. As a staff, we also created 50 character building experiences that we wanted to offer to all of our pupils. And this was a sort of a commitment really from the school to the school community and the pupils, especially if they were going to be with us in reception and on a sort of 7-year journey, that they would experience these things whilst they were with us. We introduced character assemblies. We sort of replaced whole school assemblies with specific character virtues within those assemblies. And this really was our first attempt at character being taught, I suppose. We also introduced the concept of family dining, where children would be in mixed year groups and sitting around tables, and the older children would serve the food to the younger children, and everybody would stick together at their table and have a topic to discuss. This was before they were allowed out to the playground. So this was sort of leaning towards civic virtues and service learning, really, I suppose. And then we started asking staff to be a bit more explicit around character within other lessons. You know, just drawing out on themes or topics that lent themselves well to character education. And I felt that after a year we were doing this quite well. It was quite good what was happening, but I felt that we could do more, but I wasn't entirely sure what. And then lockdown happened, and I was just mooching around really on the internet and on the Jubilee Centre website, and I saw that the CPD, the leading character in Schools CPD, was due to be launched. And that's when I first got in touch with Michael. Simply to ask, have I missed this? The answer was no, fortunately. And I sort of launched myself then into the 6 modules of that course. And to be perfectly honest, it really was game changing. I know all 3 of us have referred now to the work and the materials of the Jubilee Centre, but it really did change things for us and for me personally, because I was then able to realise what we could improve and how we could improve it, because I felt that our character curriculum was not particularly well evidenced, and therefore it really was the definition of a hidden curriculum. It was kind of happening, but I couldn't tell you where exactly, because I'd said to staff, you know, just find it, just find the opportunities to keep it on the agenda, yes, we were focusing on our 5 core virtues, and they were conversations we were having around behaviour and conduct, and the other virtues were being just captured throughout the school and in assemblies. and certain subjects were lending themselves better than others, you know, like PSHE and RE and PE. But as a result of that, we didn't have a well-balanced or progressive approach through the school. And it was a more assumed and random curriculum, which was very sort of coincidental. I was referring to it as it was happening coincidentally. And I wanted to move from coincidental to it to be intentional and planned and organized. On reflection, having done the CPD, I realized that we really did have quite a fledgling notion of taught and court character. And we hadn't even thought about sought. So the leadership point of view, it became really obvious that we needed to develop a very clear vision for the school for character education. And making sure that it aligned closely with the culture and the ethos that we desired. So the questions for me were, what is it we want? What is it going to look like? And how are we going to do it? Oh, could I ask Joe, would it be possible just to put up the slides, Joe? Thank you very much. This really is my Chris Whitty moment, isn't it? So if you just move on, Joe, to the next slide is when I mentioned the 50 things, it's 50 things to do before the age of 11 3/4. This is an idea that's been borrowed completely from the National Trust. And this is a poster that we've created that every child has a copy of to take home and stick to their bedroom wall or their fridge. And as they experience these character building activities in school, they can tick them off. And the next slide, Joe, is just a bit of a close up, so that people can see what sort of things are on there: meeting a wild animal and visiting a farm, walking in the woods, etc. We actually have at Eastbrook 4 chickens and 4 rabbits, which helps with that. And we also have some woodland, which also helps. So that's really useful. The next slide, Joe, is just a list really of what it is that we wanted to do. So you'll see that it really does align with the Jubilee Centre's thinking and materials that I had sort of learnt about during the 6 modules. So broadening the scope of delivery that included the building blocks of character and going in greater depth to those civic and performance virtues and what they led to, really. Having a planned approach to character that is caught, taught and sought. Developing the school environment, both inside and out. Opportunities when required, really, I felt, for the school in service learning and civic virtues, and CPD. Thank you, Joe. The next slide is part of the initial planning, really. There are 3 of these. I've only put 1 up here. But these are literally ideas that just came about through conversations with members of staff, Andrew, who is my deputy, and Katie, who is a senior colleague who also is qualified in forest schools. And just through conversations with them, I was sort of plotting out where and how this could be developed. And I threw in, as you can see, 4 images there. I just dropped those in so that when I was presenting this to Paul, the executive head, and other members of staff and governors, they could actually see how I was starting to link it to what we already had in place, which was the 50 things poster. The next slide, Joe, is just talking about developing the school environment. We are lucky to have a little bit of woodland, and there's Katie doing her sort of forest school stuff. So we've developed forest school, we've developed orienteering and cycling within the PE curriculum, and also just developed outdoor learning spaces, which we have been very keen for teachers to use. The next slide is I started calling this virtues branding. By way of having these reminders around the school. We've got our 5 core virtues there, but we created what looks a bit on the right hand side, looks a bit like a periodic table of 46 character virtues that have been grouped into the pillars, into the building blocks rather. And you see, if you look at those 5 virtues, I realised that we had 2 performance, 2 moral, and 1 intellectual, and no civic whatsoever, which is why it was important to put that on the plan for us. And without the Jubilee Centre work, I wouldn't have sort of thought about it in such an analytical way, really. And I think I've heard Tom Harrison talking about the fact that this needs to be lived and not laminated. You know, and these things really are a reference for staff and pupils, and actually a very valuable resource. They're not things that are just plonked up on the wall and sort of forgotten about. They're referred to daily in every single class. And behind each one of those 46 character virtues, we have a definition, and that's the next slide, Joe. Thank you. And those definitions are collated and color coded into a booklet for referencing in class, which we found very, very useful. The last slide is around it's just 2 images of staff doing training, and for me this is really, really important. This happens to be an activity in virtues definitions. I took the 6 modules from the Jubilee Centre training that I did and broke them down and used them, and sort of created 10 sort of CPD sessions in total. That the plan was to sort of roll it out over the course of 1 academic year, and I think we've done half of them so far. And these are the staff in September. And I don't think I had, at the start of our sort of journey in character education, I personally hadn't known enough about it or understood enough to be able to lead with great credibility. And I think the reading that I've done and the learning that I've done has enabled me to sort of do that, because I think the better informed you are as a leader, the more confidently you can engage with staff and therefore implement change and genuinely lead by example. The effect has been that it has been quite inspirational since the start of this academic year, really. Andrew, my deputy, has now begun his masters at the Jubilee Centre, and Hayley, who is the phase leader for early years in Key Stage 1, when we had our sort of performance appraisal meeting, she said, I really want a development target to be linked to character. And both of them are actually here in the audience this afternoon. I just think that from a leadership perspective, just knowing and understanding what character education is, having a sensible timescale to roll it out to staff, and really lead it passionately and by example, and invest in staff, because without the CPD, where they inevitably improve, staff inevitably improve knowledge and understanding in order to deliver higher quality sessions for pupils, you can't really do much without that. It sets the expectation, really, and the staff do feel more empowered to be able to live our character education offer. And Andrew, actually, he reminds me that this is not just the playing fields of Eton, but for the playgrounds of Dagenham, and it really is making a huge difference. So that's it. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Evan, thank you very much. Again, a very sort of powerful and useful presentation. So thank you for that. I know somebody has put a question, sorry, I didn't jot down your name, about a link to the 50 things to do before age page. If somebody could add that link, whether Evan, you have the link or a colleague, but as Aidan Thompson has said, we'll put the recording of the webinar online in due course, and also share the share the, thank you, somebody I think has now put the link on. Thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to move on now to my colleagues, Catherine and Michael. Catherine O'Leary and Michael Fullard, who are research fellows in the Jubilee Centre, and both have a lot of experience as primary school teachers themselves. I'm going to have to ask you to be brief, I'm afraid, Catherine and Michael, just so we do have 10 minutes or so for questions at the end, but I'll hand over to you now, so thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I'll as you know, talking is one of my favourite things to do, so I'll be as quick as possible. I'm just here really to kind of introduce you to a little bit, if people are unaware of the Jubilee Centre, maybe not unaware of, but currently what we are doing. We have just launched, and very excited to launch, our character education pedagogies project, what works, where and why. And this research project might and should interest all of you, because it's going to look at the research conducted at the Jubilee Centre, and we've done lots of research since 2012, and it's going to look at all our resources. And what we're really trying to do is find out what works in character education. You know, what strategies, what teaching approaches does our research and resources kind of recommend? But we're also looking to work with schools such as Megan, Robin and Evan, and lots of other schools across the UK who are currently doing character education, to find out what are they doing in their schools, what are their teachers using day to day in the classroom, outside of the classroom, on the playground. And our kind of overall aim is to build a character and virtue forming practices inventory, or one might call it a type of toolkit. The Jubilee Centre has a very successful framework for character education, which gives a lot of people that theoretical background and is quite inspirational for schools when they're getting this process started. You've heard Megan, Robin and Evan talk about it. But the inventory is going to be the practical element of that. It's going to be the next step. So over the next 18 months, we're going to be developing this inventory based on research from the Jubilee Centre and new research with schools. So I'd recommend you to keep your eyes open for that. And if you are interested in maybe taking part in this project, please contact myself or Catherine, as we are the research fellows working on that project. And I'll quickly introduce, and Evan has done a great job, better than I could have, mentioning our leading character in education schools CPD. Last April, we launched a free online CPD course. And two of the most common questions we get asked at the centre are, how do we do it? And what does a school of character look like? Now, the leading character education in schools CPD programme aims to answer these questions. We've currently had nearly 2,000 people enrol in the course from over 55 different countries, and it's recently won awards from Teach magazine as well. But one of the strongest points about this CPD is its flexibility, that you can do it over a week, over a month, potentially over a whole term or year, and that we included work from, and we worked, with 8 UK schools, one of them being Megan's school, Elvetham Heath. So when you go in there, you get a real feel for schools, and we call it a window into schools. You see videos of teachers talking about their school. You see footage from inside the school, and the schools have all kindly shared resources to supplement all the Jubilee Centre resources we have. So if you haven't, and I can recognise quite a few names on our list that have registered, but if you haven't registered, I would recommend you register for our leading character education in schools CPD on our website. And please, as well, if you have any feedback once you've done that, please, by all means, get in touch with me, and I will done that as quickly as I can. And I will pass over now to Catherine, who will talk to you about a few of our resources.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I'll very briefly just introduce you to some of the practical resources which have been designed by the centre to support teachers really in their delivery of character education. So the programme of study has already been mentioned, and this is an extensive set of resources that can be used from reception right up to year 6 and addresses particular virtues. So some schools have used this as a standalone resource, others have used it as the basis for their assemblies or for themed weeks which take place across the entire school. The second resource is the character curriculum. And this is an issues-based curriculum. So it uses topics that are statutory from the PSHE and citizenship and new health and relationships education. And as such, they can be incorporated into a PSHE syllabus and include topics such as families and cyberbullying. So it can really complement the work that's already going on within schools. And one of the first sets of resources that was designed by the centre was the Nightly Virtues scheme of work. This is an example of a programme of study which uses a specific teaching strategy, and in this case it's using stories. So there are 9 different stories which are used to teach character virtues. It's for use in Key Stage 2. But there's also a resource called Read, Grow, Go, which is also using stories, but this is for use in the Key Stage 1 classroom, so encompassing the entire school family and school community. And finally, the teaching character through the curriculum scheme of work is another example which uses a specific teaching strategy, and this time it uses role models to inspire discussion about virtue. And again, this is for pupils in Year 6. But there are a wide range of exciting resources that are all available for free. They're ready to be downloaded and adapted, so it's well worth exploring the centre's website and tailoring the resources really to your particular setting. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but well worth having a look at the teacher resource section of the website. I'll hand back to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now we do have a few minutes. We've been collating the questions. Please do remember, some of us have put our contact details there, our contact details on the website, Jubilee Centre website as well. So if we don't have time to answer your question, or if there's anything that you think of afterwards, please do get in contact with us, and we're always happy to answer any questions. If I can ask, I'll perhaps direct these to speakers. Megan, I think you might be best to answer the first question. I've had a few people, Catherine, Ben, a couple of others, ask about how you evaluated the impact of character education in your school.
Okay, so it goes back to my first point about not getting over panicked or over stressed about evaluating everything. I found the evaluation handbook fabulous, actually, not just evaluating how you're going, but what you want to do going forward in the future. The easiest way to evaluate it, I would suggest, is through behaviour. So looking at how, not just learning behaviour, but behaviour towards each other, so how children behave towards each other. And very quickly, one of the things we evaluated was the change in language that children used with each other. So because we were modelling, particularly with the dinner ladies who were dealing with any incidents at lunchtime, they would have to change by saying, what did you do wrong, or this was wrong. It was, how did you use the respect virtue? How did you use the responsibility virtue? And very quickly, children started to say to each other or to an adult, he's not showing the kindness virtue because he's done that, or she's not showing the responsibility virtue because she did that, and also in positive ways as well. So we would really, I would suggest that you start with behaviour, because it's an easier thing to evaluate as opposed to any other parts of the curriculum to start off with.
Fantastic, thank you, Megan. Robin, anything you would add to that in terms of evaluation, please? Oh, sorry, Robin, I think you're still on mute.
Common error, excuse me, schoolboy error. So we've kind of devised a whole school register for students who arrive in Year 3 all the way through Key Stage 2, and we leave it up to our students to who wants to provide, or who wants to come in and provide an example of something they've done outside of school, a club that they're part of, or something that they've done in school separate from the curriculum that demonstrates some of the principles and the virtues that we're interested in. And what we do is, if it's a you know, something that they've put time and effort in, that you understand, you can see that they've done so, we kind of keep that, we keep a register of what value or virtue they've kind of evidenced or demonstrated, and we keep that all the way through their school career, and it moves with them up through each year group. As well, we send postcards home, which are our 7 key principles to keep the community engaged, to show their parents or carers that they've demonstrated a particular value or a principle, and then towards the end of their career in Colmore, they can get to the point where they can earn a badge for their uniform, which is that hexagon thing there. You know, if they've wanted to take part in something that is extracurricular, they've demonstrated evidence that they've taken part in something that has these principles attached to it, and it's something that keeps those children that want to be engaged, keeps them engaged all the way through, whereas we target the other children through weekly planning of lessons where the opportunities can be identified, and we can keep them engaged that way. So it's kind of approaching it from as many angles to get coverage for our principles, you know, for the children.
Right, Robin, thank you. And then another question, we only have a few minutes, so Evan, if I could ask you to be relatively brief. I know it might not be easy with this question, and that's a common question, particularly for schools at the start of their character education journey, and that's about how many specific virtues. And we know that some schools start with 3, 5, 7, 10, etc., and then sort of widen out to that wider set of virtues like you were talking about in your presentation. So how important is it to have a set, and how many, and can you have too many?
Well, I think that was really important to us, that we didn't have too many whilst we were working at the start, and we really did just focus on 5 because it seemed like a manageable number to start the dialogue around you know, virtue literacy, etc. Then of course this year we've expanded to that other poster that I showed with 46 on there, and I know of other schools that refer to them as almost like satellite virtues. That they're not the core that they refer to, that might be underpinning something particular. It might be underpinning school improvement. It might be underpinning a behaviour policy. But I think if you were to only focus on those, you would be really limiting the scope of character education, and I think that that's not the best approach to go down.
Great, Evan, thank you. I'm afraid we're close to time, so just like to end with a few comments and a few notes. Firstly, we know that we've had a lot of people here at the webinar, and some of you are old friends of ours and people we've engaged with a great deal. Others are new, so we're hoping that for those who are new, this is the start of our conversations with you. So please do, as we've said, get in contact, engage with us and our resources. Some of the ways to do that, as colleagues have already mentioned, is through our CPD course, through our curriculum resources. We have another webinar, the next in the series, that is on Thursday the 18th, scrubbing through my notes, Thursday the 18th of March from 4 till 5 p.m. on teaching character through the arts. My colleague Aidan Thompson is hosting, so please do sign up for that if that's of interest. And do sign up to our Jubilee Centre newsletter. As I think has already been mentioned, it's our 100th newsletter coming out soon, so please do sign up for that, and that's another way in which we can stay in touch with you. I'd like to thank you all for being here, for giving up your very precious time, and I'd also like to thank all the colleagues in the centre who've made this possible, but most of all I'd like to thank our external speakers today, Megan, Robin and Evans, for sharing your valuable insights. I hope you all have a pleasurable afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, and we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you very much, everybody.